What's up, good people? It's the Ancestry Chronicler here, Shawn J. Gandy. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel. We're here once again. Haven't been here in a minute, but I wanted to just pull up and just share some things with you all. But before we get to that, I just want to ask you all to just pause and, if you can, make sure that you go and that you subscribe now to my YouTube channel. That's My Ancestry Chronicles with the Shawn J. Gandy. Please be sure to give me the thumbs up, like it, and share it if you've been enjoying the content. If you've been following my journey and been enjoying that, I appreciate it every single time. Listen, we're almost at 600, so I would love to get to 1,000 before I leave to go to Africa, which is in November the 20th. So this has been a crazy week. It's just been a crazy week. I've been on some kind of crazy emotional journey, and I'll be honest with you, it's been draining. So this past week, we had the reveal done of my second cousin, 2 times removed. We had him tested because we were trying to find out where in Africa was my 4th great grandfather, who was brought over to America. He was born in Africa, found him on the census records being born in Africa, brought over to the America and enslaved, and we were trying to find out where he was from. So last week, we found that out. We found that out last week. So, this is what happened.
All right. So I see these flags. I see the emojis. Mr. Malcolm, are you ready?
I stay ready.
Hey, I love it. I love it. I love it. So I wish we had a drum roll. Deshawn's been waiting with bated breath for quite some time. So African-born Malcolm was brought to, was it South Carolina, Deshawn?
Yes, ma'am. Charleston, South Carolina.
Charleston, South Carolina, from the country of Guinea-Bissau.
Oh, wow.
And the people in Guinea-Bissau that you share ancestry with, Mr. Malcolm, are the Balanta people.
Wow. So, yeah, that was kind of crazy to just to find that out. Was on a journey, almost a 2-year journey, about a little over 2 years of a journey, just trying to discover who he was. And so I was really, really emotionally overwhelmed, and I was trying to hold in how I was feeling because I wanted to just really just let out emotionally, because believe it or not, it just hit me different, So it almost happened when Dr. Gina Page from African Ancestry, and we had the privilege to sit down with her as she did the reveal for us. And when she asked me, the question, believe it or not, I'm really, really, really trying to fight back the tears. So let's take a look at that. Let's see it.
And welcome you personally to the African Ancestry family. You are part of a community of over 1 million Black people who now know where they're from. And I just wonder, Deshawn, I see you clapping and cheering. How are you feeling about this right now?
Overwhelmed. This has been a long time coming, and I called him African-born Malcolm because I didn't know his name. He wasn't. His name didn't. It didn't live on. And now just knowing like where he's from, and it just puts a lot of things into. I feel overwhelmed. I'm just so happy.
It's mind-boggling what it is.
What'd you say?
It's mind-boggling.
It is. And Deshawn, you said something that really struck me. You said his name didn't live on. His name didn't live on, Mr. Malcolm, but his DNA did. And it's in you. So you are the descendant of a man who was stolen from the shore of West Africa in what's now called Guinea-Bissau today. But he made it. He made it through the Middle Passage, and he made it through auction blocks and plantation living. The people in the chat have heard me say this before, but it never changes. He made it through Reconstruction and segregation and Jim Crow and Trump. And it's because of that DNA that you've been able to thrive.
So yeah, that was something right there. And I think Dr. Gina Page, I think she really, really explained it well. And I think that's why it hit differently, is because when I'm doing genealogy and I'm researching my ancestors, my family tree, and I'm going back to my ancestors, and I like to say this because for some reason, a lot of people like to ask me this, and it's normally people who are not African American or of the diaspora. It's normally people out who's not African, and they love to ask me this question when they know I do research. Were any of your people free? Did any of your people come over here free? Yeah, I did have people who came over here free. That in its own is a conversation, because it's like, how did they get free? At what point were they free? Why did they come over here in the first place? All this happened during the transatlantic period. So that's its own conversation. So I'm talking about those specifically in my family, in my ancestry, who were enslaved and brought over to the Americas, stolen from Africa and brought over to the Americas. And for those individuals, normally when I'm researching them and I'm pulling them up and I'm talking about them in my tree or on my YouTube channel, for the most part, they are descendants of that someone, that man, that African man, that African woman who endured the Middle Passage. But what hits different, what made this DNA reveal hit so differently for me, is that when we discovered him on the census record about 2 years ago, up to last week, we had named him African-born Malcolm. And we said that we were going to rename him when we found out where he was from. And so we've changed his name to Balanta Malcolm. Balanta Malcolm. And of course, I put that in quotations because that wasn't his first name, but that is attributing him a name from his tribe. And so Balanta Malcolm, he's that dude. He's that person who was born in West Africa. He's that person who was born in West Africa, who lived, who moved about, who had, and I don't know how old he was, so I don't know if he was a child, but he had family. He had a mother, he had a father. More than likely, he had siblings, aunts and uncles and grandparents and great grandparents, and how much of his extended family did he know? How much of his immediate family did he have? I don't know, but he walked and he lived in West Africa, and and particularly the area that we now know today as Guinea-Bissau. He lived in that area, and so he's that dude for me. He's that dude in my ancestry, in my family tree, who's not an ancestor. He's not second generation enslaved person. He is that person who was born free, who was captured, stolen, chained, and eventually they would bring him to a slave dungeon, and in particular, the place where they would have him is, this is an article from the Straits Times. The town of I don't know how to pronounce it, but Cachao on the coast of Guinea-Bissau was a Portuguese trading post where millions of slaves saw West Africa for the last time, bound, branded, and shipped off to the Americas. And so he's that guy. He's that guy who was captured, and only God knows how long the trek was. Sometimes they marched him for hundreds of miles to a slave dungeon. And he's kept in a slave dungeon. And then, here's some of the shackles that he would have wore. Slave shackles. The ones that are seen here are in display in a case at the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. in the United States. If you haven't gotten a chance to go there, go to that museum. plan to spend some time there because there's more. I think there's 4 floors at least. Could be more than that, but it is one journey that is going to take more than just 2 hours. I've been there twice, and I need to go back again. But my fourth great grandfather, Balanta Malcolm, he was held in that slave dungeon. And for the most part, what they would do off the coast of Guinea-Bissau, there was a place called Cape Verde, and they would take the slaves there. You can see it here. They would take the slaves if they captured them from Senegal or Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, certain places, Sierra Leone, Ghana, places like that. When they held them into the slave dungeons that dotted their beaches, they would take them. Some of them would wind up in Cape Verde. I could be saying it wrong. Cape Verde, and they would be held there. And at least 3,000 slaves a year were taken from Cape Verde and brought to the New World. And so, my fourth great grandfather, Balanta Malcolm, he was that dude. He was that dude that was. I know we talk about it all the time. It's really hard to imagine sometimes, but like I said, like this is why it hit me different, because he's that dude who was packed like sardines in a can in the hull of a ship. And, the European men would be on deck. They'd have the slaves in the small space. And the space where they kept their cargo, the alcohol, the coffee, whatever, the beans, whatever they would carry, they would keep those in a larger space than where they kept the slaves. And so that's what they did. And he was that guy. He was that guy who was stacked, packed, chained, and fettered to other Africans who did not know the same language that he knew. And so communication was out of the question. At best, there may have been a few people there who could communicate with you, but there was no way of communicating with everybody who was there. And the Europeans did that on purpose to make sure that we could not rise up and overthrow. And there were times when we did. There's actually a website out that has the ship's catalog from different countries: Spain, Portugal, Great Britain, Belgium, just France, all these areas where these ships were overrun by the enslaved people, and they were able to turn the ship around, or they were able to sink the ship, and things of that nature. But my great-grandfather, my fourth great-grandfather, Balanta Malcolm, was on that ship. And on one of those ships, and his ship, unfortunately, if you can say that, made it to the Americas. And in particularly, made it to Charleston, South Carolina, to the port of Charleston, South Carolina. Now, I've been here before. In fact, I believe it was in April. My wife, my cousin, and I, we took a trip down to Charleston, South Carolina, and this was the slave market here. And they actually moved the slave market. It was on the outside, but the people were complaining because when they would bring in the slaves in and auction them off, there would be so many slaves and so many people coming to see it. It was like a celebratory thing for the Europeans. And they would come and they would stand around and they would, reverie, in this craziness of selling humans on an auction block. And so they would be there, and it was just too much commotion. It was just too much. So eventually they moved it inside. And we actually got a chance to go inside. You can't take any pictures, but we got a chance to stand in that space, in that round space, I'd say about 10 feet, where they would put the slave on the auction block and sell him. And I walked up to that place, and I just rubbed the slab of stone there, because for all intent and purposes, my fourth great grandfather, Balanta Malcolm, stood on that very spot to be sold into slavery. Here's a sign that's outside of that building, and it reads, "Slave auctions. Charleston was one of the largest slave trading cities in the U.S. The 1800s, the area around the old Exchange building was one of the most common sites of downtown slave auctions, along with real estate and other personal property. Thousands of enslaved people were sold here as early as the 1770s. Most auctions occurred just north of the exchange, though some also took place inside. Merchants also sold slaves at nearby stores on Broad, Chalmers, State, and East Bay Streets. I don't know when my fourth great grandfather, Belante Malcolm, came over here. I know his son was born in the 1820s. So more or less, I have him the very early 1800s or the very late 1700s. And so that was his life. Enjoying it on the planet, on the continent of Africa, and then being stolen away, endured the Middle Passage, endured the slave dungeons, and then the Middle Passage, and then brought to the Americas to be sold into slavery and to spend a life on a slave plantation, living in slave houses that were no more than 10 by 10, 8 by 8, anywhere from 14 to 17 people living in these buildings. Crazy. And so, one of the things that I think about, it's like another thing that makes it crazy is that African-born, Belanta-born Malcolm, his son, Andrew Malcolm, is listed in the census record as a mulatto, someone of mixed heritage, black and white. So that means that the woman who Belanta Malcolm had his son with, that she was the product of a mother who, for all intents and purposes, was violated by a European enslaver, making her, hence, their daughter of mixed heritage, whether she was first generation or second generation, first generation or second generation of mixed heritage. And so, here is Belanta Malcolm being stolen from his family, his country, his loved ones, his people, traveling hundreds of miles to be put into a slave dungeon, and then where they had to use the bathroom in the space where they slept, and there's hundreds of them, if not thousands of them, in these slave dungeons, and then for the most part brought to Cape Verde, where they will hold them out there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for another slave ship to come and pick them up and take them to the Americas. And so he endured this Middle Passage just to get to Charleston, South Carolina, sold on an auction block into slavery, and to have, and then to fall in love or to come together with a woman who she herself, and she's unnamed, I don't even know her name, but she herself, is the product of her mother being violated, her African mother being violated by her European enslaver. And who's to know if that she herself was not also being violated. And so, this is where my third great grandfather, Andrew Malcolm, he is a descendant of this. And then his story, his first wife and children they were separated during slavery, whether they were sold away from him or he was sold away from them. But he told his children from his second wife, which is a whole nother story. We're able to trace her line back to the Bamileke people of Cameroon. But his story to his children was that my first wife and children, I don't know where they are. I can't even find them. And so this is why this reveal has hit me so hard, because there's so much behind this for me. There's so much in stake there's so much at stake in this for me. And who would have known that, almost, 200 years later, 100 something years later, that his fourth great grandchild would be able to come together with other descendants of his and do research and be able to connect him back to his people. And so Balanta Malcolm is not forgotten, not by the Malcolm family, not by the Gandy family, not by the Lane family, not by any of the descendants, the Goolsby family, the Holloway family, not by any of the descendants that come from his lineage, that comes from his loins. It's not forgotten. We remember you, we've named you, we've connected you back to the people from whence you came. And I'm honored to be able to tell his story. I'm honored to be able to have shared this story with my family. And there's generations of us. There's so many of us. I've discovered so many of my family. Just over the last week, I've discovered so many of my family. There's just so many of us. And wow. And so we've now connected back through, if I just go to my third great grandfather, he is Andrew Malcolm, one of my third great grandfathers. He's Balanta Malcolm's son. And as far as we know, he's his only son, but as far as we know, he could have other sons that we just don't know. But so Andrew Malcolm's lineage, his Y chromosome traces back to the Balanta people of Guinea-Bissau, and the lady that he married, my third great grandmother, Fanny Lowe, her maternal lineage traces back to the Bamileke people of Cameroon. And so, that's like a high honor for me and my family, just to know that we have found two branches in our family from whence we came. And those two branches, when Andrew Malcolm, the son of Balanta Malcolm, and Fanny Lowe, when they came together and produced a family, I think they had like 13 children. One of them being my second great grandmother. There's so many of us, and they whipped them, they beat them, they endured them. But Andrew was able to, when emancipation happened, he was able to, his name was the first name that appears on the rolls to vote. And his children, one of them became American Buffalo Soldier. And this just the stories of his children, his descendants. And that's a whole nother story. I'm definitely going to share my family story about what happened to the descendants of Balanta Malcolm. And I'm just so proud and fortunate to be able to tell this story and these stories. And I want to have my family come on and just be able to share the stories as well. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to share that with you because this definitely hit me. This definitely hit me different. A lot of the reveals, I think the first reveal when I found out about, my mother's maternal line going back to the Bamileke people of Cameroon and my father's maternal line going back to the Limba people of Sierra Leone, that hit me because that was the first time that I was ever able to trace any of my family back to Africa, thanks to African Ancestry and Dr. Gina Page and Dr. Rick Kittles. But that was the first time. So there's always that first time. But then this one came along, and it just, I thought I'd be even. I've been through many reveals. I've done reveals. I've had more reveals done. And I'm like, okay, I got this. But when that one hit, I'm just like, dude, you're on live. You're on Facebook Live. You're on YouTube Live, like that. Like, don't shed no tears. Just hold it in. But man, it just hit me different, and it's because Balanta-born Malcolm, he's not a descendant of someone who endured the Middle Passage. He's that dude. And we found him and we connected him back from where he came in Africa. And I am honored and I'm proud to be his descendant. And I give all glory and honor to God for being able to even trace that, for even the science, for even the know-how, for even the search, the research, all of it, how it's all come together. I honor God in that, and I'm grateful. And I just wanted to share that story with everybody, you know, just to share, you know, that it hit me different, why it hit me different, and things of that nature. And so, hey, I thank you so much, you know, guys, for stopping by our YouTube channel, checking it out. I hope you've been enjoying the content. And listen, I'm getting ready to go to Africa. So I got some more content that I want to try to put out before I go to Africa. I really got some really great content. So I'm working on some things because I want to have some things. I want to put some things out before I go to Africa. I'm still chronicling my journey to Africa. Pretty much everything is set and I'm ready to go. You know, just very excited and looking forward to it. Still got to lose some more weight to meet the desired weight that I want to be able to travel to Africa with. So that journey is going steady, slow and steady. And they say slow and steady wins the race. Yeah, I don't know about that, but slow and steady is what's going on right now. So, you know, so that's where I am. So thank you guys so much. Listen, I'm the Ancestry Chronicler, Shawn J. Gandy. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel. Again, please subscribe. Subscribe now. You can pause it right now and just say, you know what, man, I'm gonna just go ahead and subscribe. I appreciate it. Also, give me the thumbs up, like, and share. Definitely like and share. I appreciate it if you give me the thumbs up. And I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before I go to Africa, before I go to Sierra Leone. So I think I can do that, but I need your help. And I think that together we can make that happen. So I say to everybody, peace, peace, peace. And to my peoples in Sierra Leone, I'm on my way. I say Kusheo, Kusheo, Aldibodi. Yes, indeed, I'm on my way. So once again, thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel. My name is Shawn J. Gandy, the Ancestry Chronicler. Peace, 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 and ahala.